last album we're covering, one thing you can't say about it is that it's sparse and not and not there. And that is the Alice Coltrane album. Journey in SATCHINANDA. Did I get that correct?
I have no idea.
Okay. I say Satchinanda. Satchinanda, yeah.
Satchinanda, okay. Satchinanda.
There's like extra A's and N's, and it's like Satchinanda. That's what I say.
And I do not want to be that dude who mispronounces things just because I'm lazy, but that one I've looked at quite a bit and have not quite gotten it. But it's Alice Coltrane, and, you know, we've done plenty of Coltrane in the 60s. Check out, 3? Love Supreme, My Favorite Things. Giant Steps, and I believe that's it. I think we did 3, in the 60s. And we have long been fans of Coltrane. This is a very different type of album, although it does, as I listened to it and as I quickly did the research, it does feature a return performance from another gentleman that we did cover, and I won't steal the thunder from my panelists there. Josh gets to start this one off, but let's start with Matt running the numbers for this one.
So this one's 232 on Best Ever Albums in the 1970s, number 31 in 1971, and 1046 of all time. And in in Rolling Stone's list, it comes in at 446.
Gotcha. So we'll go Josh, Matt, and myself in terms of the sequence here, starting the clock. Josh, initial thoughts, Ms. Coltrane.
Okay, well, she's definitely taking it in a different jazz in a different direction than her husband. Jazz is always tough on one listen, but you've got a lot of Indian sounds. It's like this persistent bells and Indian
chimes.
Bell. I looked it up. Indian tanpura is the instrument that brings this like persistent like beat or like thrum throughout.
It's like a droning.
Throughout the entire album, and
it's like a guided meditation.
I found it distracting after a while, but it does come and go, I guess, as you listen to the album. We do have the appearance by Pharoah Sanders playing the sax in this. And
you need to splice in, the creator has a master plan. Just for my sake, yeah.
But he's not on every song. He's not in the first one. I think he's on the second one is when the horns appear. I noted Shiva Loka is the name of that track. And so, she's clearly inspired. I think Satchinanda relates to something in India, something that the Coltranes responded to. I didn't look too much into this as well. This would have been a good one to get some background on.
It is the last name of the Swami with whom she studied under.
Oh, okay.
Satchidananda.
Okay.
Yep. So,
all right, so there you go. So it's clearly inspired by that. You've got, the Indian sounds. You got, I think, the first CTS appearance of a harp, if I'm not mistaken.
At least that I can, outside of maybe a Wall of Sound album, you know what I mean, where he would throw shit like that in every once in a while.
The harp was featured in She's Leaving Home on Sgt. Pepper.
Oh,
okay. There we go. Well, it's a couple.
Well, she plays the harp, I think, on this, so she's the harp player, and so it's really taking. It's all instrumental. There's no singing. I noted that as well, and there's a cool bass solo that I noted in Something About Coltrane, which is the 4th track out of the 5. So other than that, it's just a different type of jazz. It's really kind of experimental. The droning sound really adds to the repetition of maybe stuff that like Pharoah Sanders did, like we talked about, and Dolphy, maybe to a certain extent. More Pharoah Sanders, I would say. And there's not that kind of, there's no like traditional jazz instrumentation where they burst into solos or kind of play off each other. It's way more like you said, a guided meditation album. So I can't say whether or not I liked it. It's really like unique unto itself. So that's kind of where I stand.
Gotcha.
I like this, quite a bit. I really did like the Indian, the droning, the tempura, not tempura. I'm thinking of like shrimp.
No, I think it's called tanpura.
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 Yeah, well, whatever it is, it sounds cool, and it's weird, and it's really, I really found the combination of that and the harp a fascinating combination, one that I never would have thought that I would have heard in a jazz album. It's like, talk about two instruments that are never used in jazz, and it's like, so that kind of was surprising. It almost reminded me of like two things that like, has the harp's a really pretty instrument, and like, you know, like kind of like that Indian Tanpura sound, which we've heard, you know, before. I know it was in some Beatles albums as well, but it's just that kind of a cool sound, and it's almost like I was thinking of like, I remember I got a thing at like Cheez-Its a couple months ago, and it was like a combination. It was like caramel popcorn and like a Cheez-It, and I was like, that's gonna be awesome. And it was gross. It was totally not awesome. But this is like a different thing. It's like two totally separate.
Better than a caramel Cheez-It. This album.
Better than a caramel Cheez-It. We should put that on our. Our insignia.
I'm sure the late Miss Coltrane would really take that as an endorsement.
Well, it is a low bar too, but so it was the harp was very interesting here, and she's like, I don't know how you play a harp. I don't know. It just seems like a really complicated instrument that's not like anything else. Yeah. But she's not just like plucking here and there. I mean, she's going all out. She's playing all the strings and do the chimey kind of, you know, harp thing.
Well, she's doing to the harp what like Miles Davis was doing to like Ardolfi to the trumpet and like different stuff. Like
playing it right. So I really did like that. So I think I heard more of that in the first two tracks. There was that was. Yeah, the Indian sound and the harp was pretty prominent throughout. Stopover Baby Bombay is like the shortest song on this. What I liked about that song, there's like a part where it's not necessarily a key. I don't think it's a key change that they're doing, but it's like they'll do a couple of bars and then they'll raise up. I guess that is a key change, but they raise up a little bit and then they do it again, and so it keeps on raising, going up like half steps or full steps or whatever. And it's just the first time they did it too, I was not expecting it. I was like, ooh, what was that? You know, and that's kind of what I was just talking about a few minutes ago. You know, liking the unexpected thing. So I thought that was a very interesting way to do it. And then they kept doing it. I was like, wow, that's actually almost a centerpiece of the song. The fourth and fifth, the other two tracks are more piano based. I think overall, I think that she plays the piano as well. Does she do the piano and the harp, perhaps?
I think she does both. Yeah,
she definitely does the harp. I know that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. She does the piano as well. So this was a very interesting listen. I don't know if I'm going to say it's my favorite jazz album that we've covered so far, but it's one of them for sure. You know, I think it's just because it came out of left field. I never even heard of Alice Coltrane. I mean, not that I didn't. I'm sure it wasn't a surprise that John Coltrane had a wife, but I didn't know what her name was, and I certainly didn't know she was a musician that has a freaking ton of albums. By the way, this is like her fourth or fifth. So. It was a nice surprise. It is something that I think can be nice, like background music, you know, kind of just there, that you don't have to pay a ton of attention to, but if you do, the times that I found the musicianship pretty cool. I mean, the bass and the drumming as well. I didn't even really talk about a whole lot of that, but I think that was all. It was just all really played well together for a very unique sound that I really liked and was surprised by. So thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do this background music if you listen on headphones, because this was like a sonic explosion in my ears when you listen on headphones. Did you guys listen on headphones or just in a stereo listen?
I listened on my home stereo, which has separate
speakers. I did do the headphones thing. So, yeah.
Wow, okay, because to me it was the first thing I noticed was like, this is going to be impossible for a cold listen hot take, because it was a weird oxymoron of being very accessible and also like impenetrable on one listen. I feel like it's the perfect jazz album in that, like, to go back to, because it's like, I know there's about five. I felt like in the Eric Dolphy album, where it's like, there's a lot of stuff I like here. There's a lot of stuff I feel like I need to listen to multiple times to get it, so I have to listen to this and piece it together. The difference is that unlike the Dolphy album, that the first time was anything but accessible, this was kind of accessible in the way that the Pharoah Sanders Karma album was accessible. Mm-hmm. It had similarities in terms of, when I say monotony, it's not in a bad way. It's more like the rhythmic structure, you know, builds and has certain bass lines there. It's certainly a spiritual album. As I'm listening to it, there's no lyrics, but you can tell if there were, it would be chanting or like a spiritual overtone. It shares that similar with Sanders. It's also an interesting mix of like Northern African, like Egyptian type sounds mixed with clearly like Indian, Asian sounds, and also like American sounds, like blues and elements of jazz, right? So it's this interesting world music fusion that in many ways sort of represents her, right? Because I know she studied quite a bit of like, you know, Indian philosophy. She is a African-American female, so that comes from the tradition, married to one of the great jazz musicians of all time. And then, you know, obviously historical roots, you know, like, you know, we all come from the Egyptian valley, you know what I mean? Those sounds are sort of the original music sounds that became, you know, a part of all different musics as it progressed, right, and went out. So it was really interesting that way. There's so many instruments that are right front and center, but they're also they're not getting their piece like soloing. You just notice them, but they're playing in harmony, but they're not blending together. Like it's hard to explain. It's almost like you go to a place like a buffet and there's 6 different things, and instead of putting them all on a plate and just going between it, you go and you eat a couple bites of one thing, and then you go, oh, that thing looks good, and you eat a couple bites of that, and then you keep doing it so you distinctly know that you're eating 6 different things, even though it's a buffet, as opposed to just, you know, Thanksgiving dinner, throw everything together, you know, eat a little bit of everything in between bites, would be how I'd describe this. So at times you hear the drums, the bass, the harp, the piano, certainly Pharoah Sanders. It's the soprano sax, if I remember right. Is that sound?
Yeah, it's the higher pitched one, yeah.
It's the higher pitched one, and that obviously is very clear. There's the bells, that instrument, the tambora that Josh mentions, and so you kind of are just, it's like a guided meditation in the second. I do a fair amount of meditation myself, and it's like that idea where you try to get your mind still, but you also don't fear it wandering to perceive what's around, right? And that's like what this music feels like. It's like, allow yourself to be relaxed, but also notice there's this tambora that's very like there. Oh, and notice now that there's the drums. Can you pick up the drum? And I felt like pieces of it were presenting themselves kind of like a body scan, as another describe, I'd say. And I think there's a reason for that, because a lot of the tenets of it are things that she was tied into. And I think, you know, elements of the sound of this music have, you know, been part of, you know, the Indian sensibility, but also what would be called like new age thinking and stuff like that, and sounds that now they almost become like a cliche. But once again, like context is so key. 1972 is very different than 2021 in terms of what these sounds sound like. You know, now everybody's heard sounds like this because there's been a cottage industry of, you know, Eastern spirituality, right? But in 1972, not as much.
Yeah,
so
I thought
take.
it was an interesting combination of like of something that's just very different, and it is labeled as avant-garde jazz, but unlike I agree with you, John. Unlike Dolphy, this is a much more accessible type of avant-garde. This is kind of just it's not. I mean, to me, Eric Dolphy, there were plenty of times where I'm like, wow, it wasn't pleasing. It was just off-putting and harsh, you know. And
well, Bitches Brew is like that too. You know what I mean?
That's
that we
true.
did,
yeah, Bitches Brew, right? Yes, I mean, you know, but this is kind of like it's a steady kind of, you know, sound throughout. Yeah, it just hit right, you know. Maybe it just like the, you know, in the opposite way that what Al Green did. Maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe this was just the right time. And I was like, damn, like I just really, I really liked it, and I could see myself going back to it. But it is that weird combination because it's definitely different. It's not. I mean, there's certainly no hook here, right? There's
no, like nor is there designed to be. Yeah,
right, exactly. But it's but what it's doing is very interesting, and it's
Well, but you know,
there's some melodic parts. There's some melodic parts in here. Yeah,
the hook is that like droning sound. You know, it's just it comes from a different musical heritage than Western music, which the hook in Western music sounds away, but the hook the concept of a hook is not universal in all music, and it also can. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
And it's such a weird sound too, because it's just it is an edgier song, right? Or sound. It's not like a crisp clear. It's kind of got it's a really hard thing to describe, but it's just and it just drones on it. It doesn't really vary too much. It's kind of just, and so I could see why you were saying, Josh, how you got a little sick of it after a while, because it's like, all right, I got it. But I don't know. I thought it really worked well here with what she was doing. So it's hard to describe like why it hit with me, but it just did.
Also, can we mention that like bass drum explosion at the end of the last track, by the way, that was freaking awesome? Like they came out of nowhere because I'm like, whoa, this is like quite the interplay right here. Isis and Osiris, right? Or Osiris. Yeah, it's Osiris. I hope I got that right. But that's where it is. And it's live. A recording, and boy, man, it's like improvisational, like bass and drum back and forth. And I really wish I'd been able to do the research on who the drummer and the bassist were here. Maybe I'll clean that stack, next episode. But boy, was that awesome! Yeah. But this is every bit as experimental as Out to Lunch by Dolphy or Bitches Brew by Davis or
Definitely.
Karma by Pharoah Sanders. But Trod's different. It Trod's a lot more like what Pharoah Sanders was trying to do than maybe some of the others. But and definitely some of what world music was trying to do later. There were elements of this that were definitely covered here as well. Although world music is not as moored in the jazz and blues tradition as this is, there still is a link to both of those things that can be found in this. Yeah,
John, the drummer was a guy named Rashid Ali.
Rashid Ali, okay.
And he played with Coltrane. I just saw, and the bass player there's a couple of bass players, Charlie Hayden and Cecil McBee.
Okay, I wonder which one was the one on that explosion of
At
bass and
the
drum.
last one was Charlie Hayden was on the last B2. Yeah.
Well played, Mr. Ali and Mr. Hayden, because that was awesome.